exploring our home away from home. The dogs are in the back. Let's go!
The reason we bought our camper was to be able to travel before and after we retire. We always hear people talking about what they plan to do when they retire, but then something happens to their health and they are unable to complete their dream. We'd always planned to travel when we retired, but then my husband had an injury in Kuwait. That was a wake-up call for us, and we realized that our health may not be there for us when we retire. We decided we can't wait for retirement to start living our dreams. Our trips may be closer to home and less grand, but we are making memories, and isn't that what it's really about anyway? There were two main goals for this trip. Number one, visit family, and number two, visit places I had been longing to see and experience. Those places were Mammoth Cave, Biltmore Estate, the Appalachian Trail, in particular Newfound Gap and Clingman's Dome, and the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, in particular Cades Cove. I especially wanted to see the world's largest salt and pepper shaker museum. Hopefully I could cross all those off my bucket list. So we loaded the RV, which my niece has christened Journey, towed my little red car behind her, and headed out. We started out from home at 4 a.m. I didn't understand why we needed to leave so early since the relatives were all going to be at work, but my husband says that's what time he leaves. Since I cooperated and got up so early, he agreed to stop and do a little antiquing along the way. Anyone that is a die-hard antiquer knows that different antiques are popular in different parts of the country, and prices can vary greatly. What we buy in Akron can be much cheaper in Tennessee, and the kinds of antiques can also vary. Like everything in antiques, a lot of time it's the hunt, that not so much the price, that makes you love an antique. We found two antique shops to explore. The first one we found didn't have a name sign, but only had the sign saying more antique and odd junk inside. Well, that had me interested. They had a whole case of salt and pepper shakers, which caught my eye. They were much cheaper than salt and pepper shakers at home, so of course I found a pair I liked. I ended up buying the carrot and peas. Annie found this dog planter. I have one exactly like this that she has always liked. We think it looks like our dog Cletus with his grumpy face. Do you see the resemblance? I always liked tiny cars, and this one had a tiny car too. The next antique store was Cumberland Mountain General Store. This one had a cat which won me over. And here is a stove exactly like the one I cook on at home. We found the relatives in fine health and had a good visit with them, and they made us dinner that night. Fried chicken and fried wild turkey with mashed potatoes, fresh green beans, corn, and homemade cornbread. Stick to your ribs cooking. We turned in early and it was hard for me to sleep because I had looked forward to this trip for so long. This is a picture of Cousin Josh's backyard. Isn't it beautiful? Early Wednesday morning we set out for our first adventure. We had purchased our tickets online, so we had a tight schedule. To make matters more interesting, the weather forecast was for 99 degrees with high humidity, which according to the car was where the heat was heading. We were all looking forward to exploring a cave, as caves promise a steady 54-degree temperature. Mammoth Cave is the world's longest known cave system, with more than 420 miles of surveyed passageways. New discoveries add several miles to this figure every year. The name refers to the large entrance and was in place before anyone knew how long the cave system was. The purpose of Mammoth Cave National Park is to preserve, protect, interpret, and study the internationally recognized biological and geologic features and processes associated with the longest known cave system in the world, the park's diverse forested karst landscape, the Green and Nolan rivers, and the extensive evidence of human history, and to provide and promote public enjoyment, recreation, and understanding. Mammoth Cave developed in thick Mississippian aged limestone strata capped by a layer of sandstone, which has made the system remarkably stable. It was created by the natural process of limestone erosion, known as karst topography. During this process, rain and rivers slowly dissolve and shape soft limestone, creating a vast system of caves. Underground rivers are still carving new passages today. The National Park Service offers several cave tours to visitors. Some notable features of the cave, such as Grand Avenue, Frozen Niagara, and Fat Man's Misery, can be seen on lighted tours ranging from 1 to 6 hours in length. 2 tours, lit only by visitor-carried paraffin lamps, are popular alternatives to the electric lit routes. Several wild tours venture away from the developed parts of the cave into muddy crawls and dusty tunnels. Reservations for cave tour tickets are strongly recommended as they can sell out weeks in advance. I took the Domes and Dripstones tour, which sold out 6 weeks in advance. If you are headed in for a cave tour, use the directions from the park's website and not your GPS, which may not lead you correctly. You don't want to miss your time. After the tour, we drove around and saw other caves and a neat roadside attraction, a wigwam motel where all the rooms are in the shape of a teepee. My father came here in the late 1950s, and he remembers sleeping in one of these teepees when the family stayed in this motel. The other attraction he remembers is going to Floyd Collins's cave and seeing the casket containing good old Floyd Collins. Kind of interesting what sticks in a 10-year-old boy's mind. The next day, we headed bright and early to Biltmore House. It was a 3-hour drive from where we were, so we had to get started early. We ended up hitting a terrible rainstorm where we could hardly see and the traffic slowed to 25 miles an hour. We were going to be late for our tour. Luckily, when I called, they were able to get us in for a later tour time. Biltmore House is the largest private house in America. It was built during what history calls the Gilded Age, and it certainly lives up to that definition. Biltmore House is a trip back in time, not only to the Gilded Age, but also to a time of the birth of environmental science. The approach road winds for 3 miles through a deliberately controlled landscape. The road runs along the ravines instead of the ridges, creating a deep natural forest with pools, springs, and streams. Around the last turn, the visitor passes through the iron gates and pillars that are topped by early 19th century French stone sphinxes, and then into the expansive court of the house. Today, we can hardly believe this beautiful and pristine woodlands was built on desolate and played out farmland. All of the forest was actually planned and planted. George Washington Vanderbilt was born on November 18, 1862, the youngest of 8 children. George was a shy, quiet person who exhibited little interest in business affairs. Influenced by the collection of art and antiques in his father's house, he began collecting books and art objects at an early age. George had no interest in the social world that had so captivated the Vanderbilt family, preferring instead the adventure of travel and the world of books. On a trip with his mother in 1888, he visited Asheville, North Carolina, a fashionable resort in the 1880s. Here he decided to create a home for himself, a refuge from the tumult of the city. He soon began purchasing 125,000 acres of land. The farmers were more than happy to sell their land that had been used up by the farming methods of the period. George Vanderbilt would bring together the genius and talents of Richard Morris Hunt and Frederick Law Olmsted to help him create the 250-room French Renaissance chateau, and it is a true marvel of architecture and artistry. Recognized as America's largest home, Biltmore House required 6 years of construction and around 1,000 workers, ranging from local laborers and craftsmen to internationally known artists. During building, there was a woodworking factory, a brick kiln that made 42,000 bricks a day, and a 3-mile railroad spur to bring materials to site. Biltmore is really 2 places. There is Biltmore House, America's largest private home, and there is Biltmore Estate with over 8,000 acres. Biltmore House is 178,926 square feet. This 4+ acres of floor space is occupied by 35 bedrooms, 43 bathrooms, 65 fireplaces, and 3 kitchens. Because of this fact, I have broken the visit into 2 separate videos that explains Mr. Vanderbilt's dream for the house, and the other video is about his dream to provide a reclamation for the land and making it into a self-sustaining estate. Friday, we went to Cades Cove. My hope for Cades Cove was to see a bear. I love bears and watched them on the cams in Alaska at Brooks Falls showing brown bears. I also participate in the Fat Bear Championship voting every year, but none of that compares to seeing a bear in real life, and I did see a bear, and it was the highlight of my whole trip. It was just off the road. Everyone was standing on the side of the road. Don't worry, we were the recommended distance. This photo is heavily cropped, which is why it is a little blurry, but I was so excited about this photo I just had to show you. Now back to the cove. Though geographically isolated, Cades Cove today is a popular tourist destination. A one-way, 11-mile paved loop around Cades Cove draws thousands of visitors daily. The 11 miles may take more than 4 hours to traverse and view the sights during tourist season. The cove receives approximately 5 million visitors per year and is the most popular destination in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. The valley has a rich history. For hundreds of years, Cherokee Indians hunted in the Cades Cove, but archaeologists have found no evidence of major settlements. The first Europeans settled in the cove sometime between 1818 and 1821. By 1830, the population of the area had already swelled to 271. Cades Cove offers the widest variety of historic buildings of any area in the national park. Scattered along the loop road are 3 churches, a working grist mill, barns, log houses, and many other faithfully restored 18th and 19th century structures. Pick up the self-guiding tour booklet available at the entrance of the loop road for information about the buildings you'll see in the cove and the people who lived here. White-tailed deer, black bears, coyotes, turkeys, and other wildlife are frequently spotted in the open valley of Cades Cove. Numerous trails originate in the cove, including the 5-mile round-trip trail to Abrams Falls and the short Cades Cove Nature Trail. Longer trails to Thunderhead Mountain and Rocky Top, made famous by the popular song, also begin in the cove. The Visitor Center is located halfway around the loop road in the Cable Mill Historic Area and is open daily except Christmas. Cades Cove Campground is open year-round with 159 sites for tents and RVs up to 35 feet. Today we were so tired from having fun and so much driving that we decided we would stay back at the camper and just hang out with Francis's cousins and rest up for the rest of the trip. We hit a couple antique stores in town. We went to Brambleberry Cafe first. Look at that sky that day. That was a taste of what was to come tomorrow. This bear was my favorite thing there. It was a huge piece of chalkware. It was $375 though. The next shop was the Briar Patch. The dog was my favorite thing there. He looks like my buddy that died recently. He was 50 though, so I passed him up too. The final place was Village Antique Mall. This was where I found my treasure. It was a little black bear made by Pigeon Forge Pottery. I had never heard of Pigeon Forge Pottery, but found it fitting considering I had seen my black bear the day before. Of course I bought him, and he sits on the stand beside my chair at home. Bright and early Sunday morning, we headed back to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, to Clingman's Dome, Newfound Gap, the Appalachian Trail, and the Salt and Pepper Museum. It has always been a dream of mine to hike the Appalachian Trail, but since it hasn't happened yet and may never happen, I at least wanted to see a white blaze and set foot on the trail. This was very exciting for me and the main reason for my trip to Newfound Gap and Clingman's Dome. The weather was disappointing that day though, with rain and very limited visibility. I will still show you what I was able to see. The Appalachian Trail, or as it is commonly known as the AT, is a hiking trail in the eastern United States. extending almost 2,200 miles between Springer Mountain in Georgia and Mount Katahdin in Maine. It passes through 14 states. The Appalachian Trail Conservancy claims the Appalachian Trail to be the longest hiking-only trail in the world. More than 3 million people hike segments of the trail each year. The trail was first proposed in 1921 and completed in 1937 after more than a decade of work. Throughout its length, the AT is marked with white paint blazes that are 2 by 6 inches. In past years, some sections of the trail also used metal diamond markers and markers with the AT logo, few of which survive. These weren't present where I was. Most hikers carry a lightweight tent hammock, or tarp. The trail has more than 250 shelters and campsites available for hikers. Shelters are usually spaced a day's hike or less apart, most often near a water source, which may be dry, and with a privy. They generally have spaces for tent sites in the vicinity, as the shelter may be full. Trail hikers who attempt to complete the entire trail in a single season are called through hikers. Those who hike the trail during a series of separate trips are known as section hikers. Accessed by the same parking lot where the AT crossed was Newfound Gap. Newfound Gap is a mountain pass located near the center of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Situated along the border of Tennessee and North Carolina, the state line crosses the gap, as does Newfound Gap Road. Newfound Gap is also home to Rockefeller Memorial, a popular destination within the national park, and the site from where President Franklin Roosevelt dedicated the park in September 1940. He spoke from the Rockefeller Memorial. That ceremony dedicated, he said, a sanctuary that is not a local park, a county park, or even a state park, but a national park for all the people of the country and the rest of the world to enjoy. Just up the road is Clingman's Dome. As the highest point in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and in Tennessee, Clingman's Dome towers at 6,643 feet tall. Located along the state line ridge, Clingman's Dome is a popular park destination. Situated on a summit, the observation tower offers stunningly expansive views of the Smoky Mountains as far as the eye can see. Those who make their way to the top are awarded with panoramic 360-degree views of one of the largest protected areas of land in the United States. Views from top of the observation tower are spectacular when days are clear. The view can expand over 100 miles in every direction and into 7 states. When settlers first arrived, they nicknamed Clingman's Dome the Smoky Dome, since the summit was often covered in clouds and shaped like a dome. It was renamed after U.S. Senator and Confederate General Thomas Lanier Clingman, who explored these mountains and became the first person to accurately measure the height of the peak. To get to the dome, you turn on Newfound Gap Road, just south of the Newfound Gap, and venture 7 miles along Clingman's Dome Road, where you will find a half-mile trail and large parking area. This paved trail leads you to the 54-foot observation tower. Along your journey to the dome, there are lots of scenic areas to pull to the side to get endless views of the ridges and valleys scattered throughout the park. There are several hiking trails that lead to Clingman's Dome. The Appalachian Trail intersects with Clingman's Dome and is one of the more popular trails to explore in the park. Clingman's Dome is open year-round, but the road leading to it is closed temporarily December 1st through March 31st. For your safety, the road also closes whenever weather conditions require. After visiting Newfound Gap and Clingman's Dome, I got to tour the Museum of Salt and Pepper Shakers. This might not appeal to everyone, and it did not appeal to my husband, but if you know anyone that loves these little utilitarian objects and the myriad of ways they are produced, it's no wonder there are tens of thousands of avid collectors of these precious little objects, and I have to plead guilty to being one of them. Hubby opted to wait in the car. I love salt and pepper shakers and have quite a collection myself. My favorites are the stackable salt and pepper shakers, like these clowns. The Museum of Salt and Pepper Shakers is located in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It houses more than 20,000 pairs of salt and pepper shakers from all over the world. There is a sister museum in Alicante, Spain, which displays another 20,000 pairs. The museum was founded in 2002 by Andrea Ludden. As you look around, you see galleries that consist of many display cases, which exhibit the shakers in different categories: Christmas, plastic, Americana, Amish, wood, vegetables, transportation, chefs, foods, drinks, chickens, cows, cats and dogs, wild animals, marine, characters, souvenirs, Asian, glass, metals, and Delft. The shakers are also organized by materials and color, and if a particular set comes in more than one color, these are included to show all the possibilities. Here in the Christmas section are some cute little vintage elves. Here is a large collection of mid-century plastic. Notice the eggs that can put salt and pepper on your eggs. Here are some more mid-century plastic. The black and white ones wind up and walk. The colors are so vibrant in the vintage plastics. These are knotters. I have a few of these. The salt and pepper part are little cylinders that sit in the tables that wobble back and forth if the table is moved. Here are Native American heads and deer. Turkey salt and pepper shakers are a favorite of mine. There are so many kinds, but they never get old. They always look great on a Thanksgiving table. I thought these honey bears were cute. These cats were interesting because they looked more like something to decorate your shelf with rather than salt and pepper shakers. They were about 7 inches tall. These are a little hard to see. These shakers are about 7 to 8 inches long, and some are in pairs and some are single and serve salt and pepper from the same shaker. Salt from the head of the animal and pepper from the tail end of the animal. There are zoo animals. This is one of my favorite sections, along with the long shakers. Happy vegetables. I love the happy corn. Annie likes the vegetables too. Look at the cute little sprites on the mushrooms. Mushrooms are getting really popular again. Here are Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, and I have those potato salt and pepper shakers on the right. Fork and spoon people dressed for a night out. More veggies. I really like the turnip people. Here's some chefs. I have some chefs. Now these were a surprise to me. We go to a lot of antique shops. I always see these donkeys. I thought they were just planters, but that it was because most of them had lost their accessories. Many of them are actually condiment sets. Some just carry salt and pepper, but others carry oil and vinegar as well. Now I know to definitely keep an eye out for these. These look like the 70s and 80s to me, but I could be wrong. My daughter likes mushrooms, and like I said before, I have been noticing them coming back into style, so I noticed them. I thought this one was funny because the pepper was going to sneeze. At home, I have 7 chickens and collect chicken things, so I had to get a picture of the chicken section. And here I am with the chicken section. At the end, you get to put a pin where you are from. If you are a collector, you put a big thumbtack. If you are just a visitor, a small pin. Here is the map from the second half of the year. We had to cut short our vacation because Francis received a call from his unit of the Army National Guard that he had an appointment at the VA for his injuries from his deployment in Kuwait. With the Army, they set the date, and if you don't show up, they reschedule at their convenience. So we needed to start out at 2 a.m. to make sure he would make that appointment. We didn't run into any bad weather or traffic, and he did make his appointment on time. Because there was so much to see and do at each of these locations, I decided that I would do a much deeper dive with a separate video for each of my stops on this most wonderful trip in our camper journey. Please like and subscribe so you will be notified when these and other videos are posted so you won't miss any of my videos from my Magic Carpet Camper.